I was excited for the Quique Setien era, Jules.
You can still be. You can still be.
And I'm still excited. And I have to say, and I was totally wrong here, and Sid Lowe is going to join us in a minute. But I thought, all right, so they're going away to Valencia. I still always think of the Peter Lim karma. So I figure Valencia's going to screw this up. I thought they would maybe learn their lesson in Ibiza in midweek and the scare they got. I thought, there's no Dani Parejo. Then I thought, just to be extra sure, there's that weird Rodrigo Moreno situation, which we'll get into with Sid in a minute. And I figure, they got this. But they didn't. Sid, this is like all the sticks that people use to beat Barcelona, possession, tiki-taka, whatever with. It's like they all came to fruition in one game away from home. And also Valencia, despite losing arguably two of the three best players, played really, really well, right? Is that kind of sums it up?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, I think the whole context of this is important, isn't it? Because this is about Setien coming in at a particular time, decided upon partly by rebound, because of course they tried to get Xavi and they tried to get Ronald Koeman, by a board of directors that knew that it stood accused of not being sufficiently committed to a kind of a Cruyffist idea. So in a way, there's a great Spanish phrase, which is, you want lentils here, have lentils, basically. This is what you want here, have it. And of course, there's a sense, I think, of them almost falling into the trap of trying to, if you like, trying to push an identity that I think maybe there wasn't perhaps an appreciation that they weren't quite ready for it, or that there wasn't perhaps an appreciation that that this board doesn't believe in it fully. And so, of course, you go for Setien, who embraces that, who may, as Jules says, may still get this right, it may still happen, it may still work. But you're right, it did sort of feel almost like a caricature of what Barcelona is supposed to be.
Do you think that he's trying to change too many things too quickly? Like, obviously the formation is very different than anything that's been going on at the club since Cruyff left, pretty much, with the three at the back and Jordi Alba on one side as a wing back and then Ansu Fati on the other side as a wing back as well. Do you think he should have maybe taken a bit more his time in what they were doing before and little by little make the changes, or that he changed too quickly?
Yeah, I must admit, I'm surprised it happened so fast. I thought that there would be. I mean, look, one of the things about Setien is that Setien, the things that he says are not just things he says. This belief in this approach, this belief in this style is genuine. It's absolutely there. It's not an act. It's not a way of selling himself. So of course he was going to want to segue into that. But I must admit, I'm with you on that, in the sense that I'm surprised how quickly it happened. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean it's problematic to shift the formation, because it may well be that it works immediately and that players fall into place. And that first game against Granada, there were some signs of them doing some of the things that he wanted. Because, of course, we sort of made the mistake, I think, of saying, right, well, a Cruyffist style is all about scoring loads of goals. Well, they were already scoring a lot of goals at home. Their most common scoreline this season was 5-2 under Valverde at home. The problem really was that they were getting caught so much. And so possession, of course, and this is one of the other things that's part of the debate, and I think gets overlooked, is possession. People say, oh, well, the possession is sterile. Well, it's not sterile if it protects you. And against Granada, at least, you thought, well, it did protect them. Granada had one shot against the post and could have won it with that, it's true. But Barcelona squeezed the life out of Granada and squeezed the life out of the game. So you thought, well, maybe they're going to protect themselves with possession, knowing that they can't protect themselves with kind of, if you like, traditional defending, for want of a better phrase. The problem is, of course, they then go away to Valencia, where it gets a much sterner test, and actually it wasn't secure. And keeping possession didn't create anything for them, but nor did it protect them.
All right. So this is what gets me, right? So there's obviously a big element of nostalgia. We should point out, though, that you can hark back to dumb it down for people to the Barcelona of 10 years ago, sort of peak Pep. But Pep Guardiola certainly doesn't play that way anymore. I mean, he has evolved his own, and it would lead me to think, hey, maybe there's a reason for this. That he's kind of moved on from that. But the other thing is, even if you were going to try to play that style from back then, it wasn't just about possession in the great early Pep sides. It was about pressing and a lot of activity, which it's objectively really difficult to do with Lionel Messi at this stage of his career. And is also about, the possession. There was natural chemistry to it. The creation may have been extemporaneous, but it came from people playing together, knowing each other's attitudes, being able to, I think Xavi put it, like, when it works, you can create time and space where there isn't any. And that chemistry will take time. So that part will come, or might come, as I see it. I don't know if the pressing side of the game is ever going to come.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think there's a whole load of things as well. I mean, everything you've picked up on, I think you're absolutely right. I think it was about the type of players they had. It was about the development of these players together through a system with an idea, who were kind of radically committed to this idea and intrinsically believed in it. And now, I must admit, I look at this team now and I think, well, Busquets believes in this, but I'm not sure if some of the others do. And the pressing was the thing that Guardiola was most obsessed by. He gave a conference, I think in his first year at Barcelona, maybe his second year, and the focus there wasn't on keeping the ball, it wasn't on circulation of the ball, it wasn't on opening up space, it was on pressing and getting it back quick. And you're right, with Messi in this stage of his career, he has to be liberated from that. That said, he was partially liberated from that by Guardiola anyway. There's some other differences that I think are probably worth picking up on, which is that when you dominate possession to this extent, in a way, what you partly do, of course, is you encourage the other team to sit deep and park the bus. Now, we saw this in Spain in 2010, and in particular, we saw this with the Spanish national team in 2012, when they were accused of being boring. And Del Bosque said something which I think is really interesting at that point, which has been overlooked. And this comes back to the idea of what possession is for. Is it for creativity or is it for protection? And Del Bosque said, you know what? I would rather teams sat deep and did that than that they came and pressed us and took the ball off us in dangerous parts of the pitch. And he said, I'm less frightened by that. I'm less worried about that. This is about control. And yes, it might take a long time to get through and get that goal, but if we get it, we've done it. We've won. And there was an element of that. If you do that, then you're shifting. It's the short blanket theory to an extent, isn't it? It's you're shifting the game to another part of the pitch. You're not going to cover the whole of the pitch. You're shifting it to another part of the pitch. The other thing that happened with Guardiola, of course, was which Setien's not yet doing, and in particular isn't doing it if the two wide men are wing backs. Guardiola opened the pitch up. Remember those discussions with Thierry Henry? If you leave that touchline, I'll put you on the bench. You will not play. I don't care that you're a centre forward, that you're one of the greatest players the Premier League's had and all this sort of stuff. You play on the touchline. Why? Because we need the pitch to be opened up so that we've got the space to maintain possession and circulate the ball inside. Now, of course, if you've got two wing-backs and they're only occasionally reaching that point, unless Barcelona aren't opening the pitch up. And the other thing, by the way, is that park the bus thing, that difficult to get through thing, that thing of maintaining possession and thinking, how do we find a way through this? We forget that Guardiola had that problem too. There's a reason that Barcelona bought Zlatan Ibrahimovic. And it was because they wanted someone to fix the centre-backs. They wanted to be able occasionally to put the ball into the box and therefore force teams to come out of the box and not just sit and wait for them. So some of these problems we have seen before, and we sort of look back on Guardiola and say everything was absolutely perfect. Well, there were some times when it wasn't.
Well, I think that's a great history lesson, Jules, from Professor Sid Lowe here. But it's remarkable to me, like, how people sort of forget the past. And this seems like kind of one of those sort of half-assed decisions. Like you said, once they went for Koeman and Xavi and they got rebuffed, they're like, we're going to have a problem. We can't leave this guy here. Let's go Quique Setien without any kind of plan about how it's going to work. On top of that, we should mention Luis Suarez injured.
I was going to say that because I thought watching the game, and we've criticized Suarez quite a lot because he's been overweight and maybe he's been not as good or not as efficient as he's been in the last 3 years, for example. Even last year.
Last couple of months he was playing better.
Yeah, he was playing better. He was scoring ball, but he was maybe playing with one knee. I mean, he was clearly not 100% and fully fit. But I thought watching the game, Messi really looked like he was lost almost without Suarez. And I did think, okay, Griezmann and Messi, that could work together up front. Or Messi would always find a way. But maybe it's now you realised how Messi was dependent on Suarez as well, even when he was saving the game by himself.
Sorry, let's touch upon Griezmann then, because Jules, you and Griezmann have a lot in common. You're both French. Yes. You're both NBA fans.
Yes. Handsome.
Yeah.
What?
Griezmann's not that handsome. No, all right. How would you fix it? You've obviously Griezmann, you follow this thing closely. Could he be using Griezmann differently? Is there a better way to use him?
The only issue I have is that I think the Griezmann, and Sid might disagree or you might disagree, I think there's a lot of points in common between the way Messi plays and the way Griezmann plays. Completely different, for example, to a Suarez and Messi relationship. Griezmann, as you can see with the national team when he plays with Giroud up front, he loves dropping deep. He's almost like a number 10. I mean, at the World Cup in 2018, he played as a number 10 for France. That's what he was so good. He scored less maybe, but he was so good at dictating the game. He was pretty much in every pattern of play. He was involved.
Yeah, but he also played up front for Atletico Madrid at times.
True, but in a very different way. Yeah, but there was no Messi there.
And it was all counterattacking, or a lot of counterattacking.
So I wonder, and maybe that will come as well, and Setien will find a way. I just wonder how well those two without Suarez can play together in both centrally.
I said,
yeah. I mean, look. Put really simply, Griezmann has a natural position, and that natural position is Messi's.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, all right, well,
that's what I meant, but you said it much better than me, Professor.
More succinctly.
Yeah.
But Sid, this just to wrap this Rodrigo Moreno thing, I'm curious about two things. One, does it mean that they are going for a center forward, and do you think they need one? And B, is it, when we see this happen, is this the case where they thought that they might be a little bit naughty here and like, oh, let's go and destabilize the situation by leaking this news before we actually play against them?
I must admit that thought did cross my mind, the cynicism of it, and thinking, oh, it's Valencia this weekend. Which of their players can we tap up and see if we can put him off a little bit? But no, I do think it's about them genuinely wanting him, thinking that there's maybe a way of making this happen. Not least because they know, because we saw it in the summer with Atletico Madrid. They know that Peter Lim is open to this idea. In fact, they know that Peter Lim wants to do this if he can get the right fee. The problem is, this takes us back into the Setien appointment again. And by the way, I say all of this as someone who likes Setien and thinks that the work Setien did at Las Palmas and Betis was largely really very good indeed. But it takes us back into the same thing again, which is, if you buy Rodrigo now because you're in a bind, because you're under pressure, because you're hurried, you go and do it now. Well, who's available? That guy. Which is a bit what happened with Setien. You know, if long-term they want Lautaro Martinez, well, if they go and spend 60 million on Rodrigo now, are they going to find the 120 million they need for Lautaro in the summer? They can't. So they need to make a decision that's longer-term in this. I also think, and allow me a moment of kind of, if you like, personal bias, I also think that, I hope at least now, that those people who pointed the finger at Luis Suarez as if he was the reason for Barcelona's ills when he's been involved in 40% of their goals this season, when he's the fourth top scorer in the club's entire history. I just hope some of those people may now look at this and think, oh yeah, you know that Uruguayan guy, he was quite good and quite important. And I don't know about you, the overwhelming sensation I had watching the game on Saturday, one of the overwhelming sensations anyway, was Messi's going to get very bored. Very, very bored. And if that happens, then I think they've got a big problem.
Sid, thanks so much for joining us. I do agree with you. I think it's going to be hard to spend 60 million on Rodrigo Moreno now, 120 million on Lautaro in the summer, especially since then they're also going to, of course, bring back Neymar, or at least pretend to bring back Neymar.
Well, thank you very much for watching ESPN on YouTube. For more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for live streaming, premium content, and let's not forget as well, ESPN FC 7 days a week. Subscribe to ESPN Plus.